this is Shy Silverleaf, and welcome back for part 4 in this series, working with textured stitches. Now this can be an even bigger pain than your counterclockwise, your clockwise, or even both of them put together for no swirl. Okay? And the reason being is that with a textured pattern, and I did this in my favorite stitch that I have dubbed Dragon Scale. It's also known as Honeycomb. There's probably a couple of other names to it, but to me it looks like the scales of dragons. The reason being is having these textured stitches makes it a little difficult sometimes to distinguish the wedges. For instance, to work this particular circle, I used the counterclockwise swirl. As you can see, following my finger, you can see the counterclockwise swirls going around at each and every wedge. But if the neat thing about it as well is if I hadn't pointed... Okay, let's try that again. The other pain in the rear end thing is that every other row, the stitches don't line up quite right. You can see the scale pattern right here in this wedge. However, if you look very carefully, for instance, in this, I have two Tunisian pearl stitches side by side, which drives me crazy, but if I tried to fix that, it would throw the entire pattern out of line. So it's better to have just two side by side like this than have the entire pattern thrown completely out of whack because of it. And the great thing about the textured stitch is if I hadn't pointed that out, you probably wouldn't notice. Nobody else probably would notice too, unless they really know what they're looking for. Now, the Dragon Scale stitch is composed of two stitches. You have the Tunisian Pearl stitch and you have the Tunisian Simple stitch. And how it works is you do pearl, simple, all the way around, and then you simple your pearls and pearl your simples. Sounds a bit like moss stitch in either regular crochet or knit, but it definitely looks different than moss stitch. So let's get going. Go ahead and get your 6 stitches on, whichever method you choose. Tighten up your ring. And what I like to do is, my favorite swirl is the counterclockwise swirl, where you do back front for your work the the stitches in the second one. Okay, it's just, to me, it looks prettier. Okay, and with Dragon Scale, I like to have the very last stitch that I work the pearl stitch, because I think that looks pretty instead of having a line going along it like you would if you did the simples along this part of the wedge. If that thrills you, hey, go for it. So, in order to accomplish how putting the pearls first, you're going to go in the back, simple the back vertical bar. You're going to purl the front, which is push down on your yarn, go behind the front vertical bar, let the yarn go up between the hook and the piece you're working on, yarn over. I use my thumb to hold this part of the working yarn that's right beside my hook that I just let go of, and you just pull through one, and there is your pearl stitch. It kind of underlines it, which is really neat. Turn it around. Oh, no, shame on me. I could hear you screaming. Gotta mark it first. Okay. This is a lot easier to mark because I'm going to do simples first and then pearls. Just mark your pearl every single time. Now, you don't absolutely have to do a counterclockwise swirl and your increases always be simple first and then pearl. You could do the clockwise swirl and you could put your pearls first and then your simples for a different effect. Up to you. Use whatever works for you. Play around with it. Have fun. Happily, this is only a 2-stitch by 2 round repeat. I have not tried this with any stitch patterns bigger than that, like say a 4-stitch repeat, or I think that would get kind of crazy until you actually grow it out large enough to accommodate the larger stitch pattern, and then it'd be kind of neat. That'll let go. Alright. Get it in without splitting any yarn. Simple the back. Purl the front, as once again I push the yarn down, go in behind the front vertical bar, let it go so it goes up behind the hook, and the part that's going up behind the hook, that's what you're holding on to. Yarn over, pull through one, and there's your Tunisian purl. Okay, mark that, work it off. Oh, come on, you. I think we might have accidentally split a yarn there, but that's okay. On this particular example, it's not all that vital. Okay. Simple the back. Purl the front. And I like to use my middle finger to push it down because this is tensioning and the other fingers are holding on to it. If you're not used to contorting your fingers to push down on the yarn to do that purl stitch, keep practicing. And something fun that I do to kind of limber up my fingers periodically is I do that string game where you take a long piece of string, you knot them together to form a loop, and then you start doing stuff like this. I've played this with my kids and they love it. And the only thing I know how to do is the game. I don't know what it's called, and Jacob's Ladder. And that'll help limber up your fingers some. Just for laughs. Okay, and just keep going all the way around. Simple the back, purl the front, simple the back, purl the front. Don't forget to mark the purls. Now there is something different that I do with the textured circle that I do not do with my straight up simple. Oops. I'm talking about it, thinking about it, so I did it. Gotta purl that bad boy. Something that I do with this that I'll show you in just a minute that I don't do with the others, and you'll see why. Working in the dragon scale presents its own set of challenges as you get bigger. But follow my advice and you should be fine and dandy, and hopefully thumbing through whatever Tunisian pattern books you have, or magazines, crochet magazines and whatnot, looking for stuff that you can turn into, looking for various patterns that you can turn into circles. Alright, that is the last one. We only need one set of stitch markers for this, because we're just going to let it swirl away. Okay, with, come here you, okay, with this, with the wedge, it's pretty simple to distinguish what's which and where the wedge begins and where it ends. Very simple. All you have to do is look, there looks like a little bit of gap kind of on either side of the slice, if you want to call it that. Okay, with this, it's a little harder, but if you know what you're looking for, you can find it, okay? Because remember, here's your simples and there's your purls, and that's what you're looking at, is those side by side. Now with these, you actually have to, okay, with this one, you're looking at each round as you go. The whole entire round, just one little bit at the time. Okay. With this, you need to look at each wedge as you go. This is its own little world, and it is separate from this wedge. It's separate, which is separate from this wedge, which is separate from this wedge, because of trying to stay in pattern as much as possible. Right? Now, okay. Here with the counterclockwise, we work the normal stitches first, and then we work the increase. Okay, now to figure out what this first stitch is going to be, our increase stitch, in my pattern, the back is going to be simpled and the front's going to be purled. So if we continue to maintain that pattern, this first stitch needs to be purled so that it will be purl, simple, purl. Okay, so we're going to purl 1, okay, then go in the back, grab it, simple that one, purl the next stitch, and that is one slice done. It looks like a little mess, but that's only because it's rather small. And it's a tight area. It'll look much nicer, as you have seen with my example, as you get bigger. And that's a fairly standard statement with most circles. And we continue that. We know to purl the next, because that's the first stitch. I beg your pardon. That's the first stitch in this second wedge. Remember, it is its own monster. Now, I can hear you yelling, you're out of pattern. Look, we have a purl and we have a purl. That's essential to maintain the pattern. And that's going to happen every other row. In this case, it's going to happen on every even row. It drives me crazy now doing it, but once you get it, once you're done and get it big, it's not so bad because it blends right in. Okay? Purl, simple, purl. The stitch marker up. Now the odd rows, they're actually going to fall into pattern completely the entire way around. You're going to purl, simple, purl, simple, uninterrupted, which is quite nice. It's just those pesky little even rows. Now, let's show you what happens if I accidentally, this is the even row, go ahead and simple this instead of purling it. Simple. Actually, we're going to do that on the last two wedges so you can really see what's going on between the end of one row that you mess up on and the beginning of another. Okay? So we're just going to go ahead and simple this. Excuse me, purl it. Purl. Simple. Purl. Return, pass off. Purl. Simple the back, purl the front, Alright, now we're at the last two wedges, so I'm actually going to mess this up and do a simple, and let me put a little slip stitch marker here so I know where to back it up too. So we're going to simple, which means we're going to purl the back, and this time I actually pushed the yarn forward so I can more easily grab that back yarn. Now I'm going to bring it around, hold on to it, and purl it. Simple it. I'm not even going to move my stitch markers up. Okay. Now I'm going to, what's this? I'm going to purl this. This one falls into place. Purl, simple, purl. So if we actually followed the pattern, every other wedge would be totally out of whack. You see that? Right in here. That does not look right at all. Compared to that, you don't have the swirling anymore. It's just this hodgepodge jumble that's just So we're going to back that up without losing the last loop that I worked correctly. And these are just mint tins that I emptied out, washed out, and I love them for storing stitch markers and rings for knitting and just all kinds of fun little gadgets and gizmos and essentials that you need that you really don't want to lose. Try and straighten this back out a little, and there it is. Alright, so now we're going to go back in the round 2 oddball pattern. So that was a purl, simple, purl, and now looking at it, see, doesn't that look nice and pretty? And you can actually see the dragon scale starting to form right in there. Much, much nicer. If you do it in other stitch, just play around with it until you find what works for that particular stitch pattern. So, purl, simple, come on you, purl, move the stitch marker up, there it is. Sorry, I like to get mine up underneath the 2 bumps. The one that kind of underlines the stitch and the one that connects up to your loop on your hook. Oh, get on there. Okay. So that was a round 2 oddball round, is what we'll call it. Now, round 3 is going to fall into pattern. We just did a purl. Look, here's a purl. See the little underline? We're going to simple our purl and purl our simple. The way that you can tell with this particular stitch pattern that you have it right is by the time you hit the stitch next to the one you're going to increase, this stitch needs to be the same as the stitch that's going in the front leg. So purl, because remember we're going to simple the back and we're going to purl the front. Dun, dun. See, round 3, and there's a full little dragon scale sitting right there. So, continue in this pattern all the way around, simpling your purls, purling your simples, putting your counterclockwise increase right where it needs to go. And once again, I will show you the oddball even round. And now we've got it big enough that we can actually leave 3 loops on the hook of the wedge. Alright, we're looking at it. Remember, each wedge is its own separate monster. And now you see why I'm calling it a monster. Because it feels like a monster until you get the hang of it. And then it's your friend. It's a friendly little monster. That looks so daggum cool. Can you imagine a hat in this? Or the center of a sweater? You know, have this in the middle and just build it from the outside. Maybe do some lace work around it. I mean, the possibilities are absolutely endless for any of these techniques. And once I'm done showing you this, I'll show you something really neat that I need to unfortunately do over. Okay, so simple, purl, simple, purl. And remember, if you lose track, beg your pardon, of what round you're on, count the normal stitches, which is these right here, and add 1. So 1, 2, we're on round 3. We're a little over halfway there, so stay with me. And if you're working this with me, you can do it. Hang in there and keep at it. You may have to rip everything apart a couple of times before you get the hang of it, but guess what? So did I. The next series I plan on doing, I will show you a project in Potentia that I've had to rip apart. I think I will be on the 7th time working it after I rip it apart, and you'll understand why. Just be patient with yourself. Try not to get frustrated and throw it across the room. Take a break, walk away from it for an hour or 2, come back relaxed with a fresh mind and a fresh set of hands if you need to. Some of you out there may have the same problem I do. I expect when I pick up a new project to play Mozart when I can't even do chopsticks. And it gets really frustrating really, really quickly. Try not to do that to yourself. It's no fun. All right. There is the end of the normal round, is what we'll call it. Time for another oddball round. Okay, so once again we're looking at this wedge and this wedge alone. We have simple, purl, simple, so we need to start out with a purl, even though we just purled this one. Each wedge is its own separate monster. So purl, simple, here's the stitch beside our increase. We need that to be a purl, which it is. Means that we did everything right there. And then simple, purl, move your stitch marker, return pass off, here we go. And you just keep going like that, doing your normal round, then an oddball one, normal, oddball, as big as you want it. Bind off is continuing that pattern around, as you can see. My purls are over top of my simples. My simples are over top of my purls. And here, I beg your pardon, is the increases. And you'll see that everything was correct in pattern. Here is my purl. There's my simple. Here's my purl. These two are part of my increase, and I just did that as I bound off. No? Lots of fun with that. Now, I know I've shown this in the last set. We'll show it in this set. This it's supposed to be a hat. It's massively oversized. I need to rip it apart and actually figure out sooner when I need to go past the crown and then just start working straight down. I'm no good with hats, and here's proof. Okay, starting out with this, it's a much finer gaze. You will see that I did a counterclockwise swirl, and then about halfway, I changed direction to a clockwise swirl, and see how it just goes back and forth, and I could make it go back and forth, or just to change things up, I could have it go counterclockwise, no swirl, clockwise, no swirl, counter, no swirl, and just back and forth, and just grow it out to a monstrous rug, and that'd be so gorgeous. Or a nice circular little afghan to snuggle under when it gets cold. The possibilities are absolutely endless. I hope you have enjoyed working these 3 methods. Well, technically 4 if you count it in the textured stitch. Hope you have enjoyed learning these methods with me and had as much fun as I've had bringing them to you. This is Shy Silverleaf. Like, subscribe. Feel free to follow me on Facebook. I am Shy Silverleaf there also. And I will see you in the next series with Hook at the Ready. Thanks. Bye.